The Dalai Lama talks about the mind that perceives a snake in a house, right? So we need to, if we think there's a snake in the house, it doesn't help to say there's no tree outside. That doesn't help. We need to check. If we perceive a permanent eye, let's look for that permanent eye. If we can't find it, just as when we look in the house and there's no snake, our mind that fears the snake will disappear. In the same way, the misperception of the permanent eye will disappear once we see it's not there. Okay. Now, we'll go a little deeper. Because usually, due to our habit, once we understand there's no permanent independent eye, our mind perceives an eye that, although not permanent, impermanence, changing, and although not separate from mind and body, still dependent on mind and body, we make that work. It's still, there's some connection to mind and body, but it seems to be separate from mind and body, like an owner, a controller of mind and body, right? The one that enjoys mind and body or controls mind and body. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? Okay. So that kind of mind appears to us. We have a sense of an I that exists as some separate entity from mind and body. And usually, when we say we see another person, in actuality, in reality, we can only ever see something that is not the other person. Would you agree? Right? I mean...
Can you elaborate on that?
Okay. What's your name?
Ted.
Tim?
Ted.
Ted. T-E-D? So, Ted. I say I see Ted, right? I see Ted. But actually I'm seeing the front of his body. Is the front of his body Ted? No, it's a part of Ted. But I'm seeing something that is not Ted, right? If I ask you, do you see this table? You would all say, yes, I see a table. But actually, you only see a part of the table. Because the table is made up of this side and that side and this side and an inside, right? There are particles, inside atoms, external atoms, glue, but you don't see all of this. And still you say, I see the table. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. Okay. Seeing another person always means seeing something that is not the person. I say, I touch the table. Right? I say, I touch the table. But I'm touching something that's not the table. That part is not the table. It'd be a really tiny table. Okay? I put something on the table. I don't put something on the entire table, just on a part of it. So actually, when I say I see something, I can only see it via a part of it. Because I never see the entirety. If I say I see Ted's body, I don't even say I see Ted. I see his body. I don't see the entirety of his body. I don't see his heart, his liver. I mean, I'm not even his back. Not even the back of his head. I mean, I could change that. But the moment I see the back of it, I can't see the rest of it. So I only ever see a part of it. When you touch me, well, it's a part of me that gets touched. And that's not me. If you touch me here, I say, I was touched. So, but it seems that to our mind that there is a separate I that I could actually see without having to see anything else. Right? It feels that way. So that's I, that is a controller of mind and body. That would be a self-sufficient I. So it sounds the same as independent. Yeah, we have to use a word there. So they use the word self-sufficient. It just doesn't mean independent in the usual sense, not in the sense as before, like totally separate from mind and body, but still having a kind of autonomous nature that it's kind of dependent and kind of not dependent, right? Kind of connected to mind and body, but still separate. Okay, and that is self-sufficient, substantially existent. They use the word substantially existent, which means it's just a philosophical term. It's really long and wordy in English, but once you understand the meaning of this word, it's easy. relatively easy. So self-sufficient just means you could see it, you could actually perceive it without having to depend on mind and body. Okay? So when I set off for India, I was looking for myself, and I was looking, not finding out what my body is or what my mind is, I was looking for a separate I, right? So the sense that there could be an I, it's like a controller of mind and body, that exists, that although it's impermanent, okay, it's changing, fine, it's changing, but it controls mind and body. It's still something different from mind and body, and it controls mind and body. It has its own entity as such. Plus, if I would really search long enough, if I look hard enough, I would not perceive mind or body, but I would just perceive that self. So I could perceive this self without having to, not via seeing something that is not the self. Not via seeing something other, but just the thing itself.
Like the soul you talk about.
Maybe you call it soul. The Buddhists don't talk about it as soul. I mean, it depends on what you mean with soul. Like the Christians.
Said in the morning.
Yeah, I use that word, but again, we have all different ideas of what the soul means. If that's what you call the soul, yes, then it would be the soul, right? Okay. So that is, again, doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. Because could it be? I mean, you can just check any object. Any object, can you see that object without seeing something that is other than itself? Can you come with any example?
No.
You can't, right?
Say it again.
Is there anything you can perceive? Just see the thing itself without having to perceive something that is not that thing. No, right? If I see a body, I see a part of it that's not the body, it's just a body part. If I see a table, I see only a part of it. I never see the entirety of it. Anything I do is I put something on the table. I don't put anything on all the parts of the table. I always put something on a non-table. And then I say I put it on the table. Right? So therefore, I cannot recognize something. Like this self-sufficient existence, it's just not possible. Self-sufficient substantial existence is not possible because, and I say why now why? There is no separate owner. I'll explain why. But definitely we can very quickly come to the conclusion that substantially existent. So we say there's a self that has two characteristics. It exists as separate from mind and body, and it can be recognized without having to rely on something other than itself. Does that make sense? Without having to see something that is not itself, it can be seen. That's the sense we have. That's impossible. Yes. You had a question?
Yes. When you see things, you don't see all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you also, when you look at something, you see all the things around it, all the space around it.
That's true. You also see the things around it. That's true. But conceptually, with our mental consciousness, we can actually just think of that and taking it out of the surrounding. Okay?
Wouldn't be exist if it wasn't all this.
No, it wouldn't exist that way in reality, but we can still separately think about it. Yes, but I agree with you, with our sense consciousnesses, we cannot take it out of context. It always comes with surroundings, absolutely.
Do you mean definition by contradiction? This is the meaning?
Pardon? Say again?
Definition by contradiction? By like day and light, day and night, black and white, things like that? So you cannot have white without...
Black? Ah! Oh, no, I don't think she was saying that so much. I mean, she was saying like, actually, if we look at just this object, we cannot just ignore what's around it, right? It's all part of the appearance. I think
I'm
that's...
referring about what you said about definitions, because we are
Definition? What did I say?
coming again and again to this matter of definitions and labeling.
Labeling, yes.
I think this is the core matter.
Yes, you're right. You're totally right.
Yeah, I just want to understand exactly what...
I know,
what
Ted.
you
I know,
said
Ted.
about it.
Allow me to first talk about this coarser type of self, and I'll get to that. Right? So I'm trying to get us step by step. Like first, yesterday I went right at it. Today I'm taking a slightly different approach. So the self doesn't exist as a permanent partless entity. I already said that. The self doesn't exist as a So now we are at the self-sufficient. So let's look at a self-sufficient I. That at times it seems that there's, yes, in a permanent I possibly, right? There's a sense, yes, we have no sense it's permanent at least, but it still seems to be the controller. When I say I'm controlling my mind, I'm watching my mind, I'm watching my body, there's a sense there's an entity separate. So let's look for that. Let's look for that. And with regard to that, there is a textual quotation where it says that such a self is impossible. Because if such a self existed, there's only two possibilities with regard to how it exists in relation to mind and body. Where do we look for such a self-sufficient I? Where do we look for it? So I know you want to go in a different direction. Let it go for now, and just please follow me on this, because it's all connected. If such a self-sufficient I existed, who would agree that this I could exist? Who has a sense that that I exists? I have a sense. I believe there's a, right? That's how it seems to my mind, depending on the circumstances, right? Just my ordinary day-to-day life. If you say something to me, maybe something harsh, for instance, or you praise me, there's a sense of a self-sufficient I. It's not like you're praising my mind or my body. No, me, right? Or you criticize my mind and my body, you praise me. Okay? There's this appearing I. And that seems different from mind and body. Now, there's only two possibilities. If it existed, okay? So I believe it exists. I act accordingly. My life is basically governed by the belief in that I, okay? So, how could it exist?
Could you call it an ego?
Yeah, if you want to call it an ego, yeah. Ego is just another word for I, right? It's the Latin word for I. So we use the word ego actually in the way like a mind that perceives strongly of a self. Sometimes the mind is referred to as ego. But we could also say, yeah, if an exaggerated notion of an I, which couldn't be there, that is the ego, yes. If it existed, there's two possibilities, because it seems to be something other than mind and body, right? So either it's one with mind and body or separate. Okay? Those are the two possibilities. Now we've already said it's separate. If it is separate, then we should be able to remove mind and body and find it. Right? We should be able to separate, to remove the mind, remove the body, and still have that self. That's impossible. That's impossible. So, if it's not separate, is it one with mind and body? Okay? Is it the same as mind and body? Now, there's two possibilities. It's identical with mind and body, or it's the collection of mind and body. Okay? Identical with mind and body would be bizarre, because it would all merge into one. Okay? So there's one I, and then mind and body become one, so everything would just be one. That would be, why would I say my mind, my body, if it's all one? Okay? And since there's more, and if I were to say, okay, mind and body are two, so there would have two eyes. I would have two eyes, because mind and body are two. So it really doesn't make sense that they're the same. It's really absurd. So then some people say, okay, so if it is not one, separate would be like, no, you have no mind and no body, you still have an eye. What would that eye be? Tall? No. Kind? No. Because kindness is the mind. Tallness is the body. But if that eye were separate, and you had removed mind and body, what would you say about that eye? Right? Is it tall? Is it kind?
Shapeless.
Pardon?
Shapeless.
Huh?
Shapeless.
Shapeless. Well, shapeless. Shapeless is like it's non-physical, right?
It's nothing.
It's nothing. So it doesn't exist because it's nothing. It's nothing. Could you say anything about it? Like, it's not, there's not that, no, there's not that. So it's non-existent. It's non-existent.
Why?
Huh?
Why a non-physical whatever?
Up there?
Phenomenon is not existing.
Up there? But when we can say something about it, it must perform a function, right? Great, okay. Shapeless is non-physical, but it does something? Does it do something? Does it perform a function? No.
So it can perform.
It can perform, but without mind and body.
electricity, for instance, as long as you don't hook a lamp to it.
Yeah, but it performs a function.
It would perform the function if you connect to it, but if not, we don't feel it, we don't see it, we don't.
But you can measure it.
Hmm?
You can measure it.
Yes.
So it exists. It's not.
So the eye, can the eye be measured therefore? Because yes, so, thank you for that. So, the eye, can it be measured? The eye cannot be, like the thing is, if it existed separately from mind and body, right? We can say something about the mind, we can say something about the body, and we believe in the separate entity. But if that was there, well, how can we say it's there? What can we say about it? What can we say about it? We insist it's there, but just insisting it's there, if I were to insist there's a butterfly here, you just can't see it. It's there. Just for a butterfly to be there, you don't need to see it. So I insist it's there. I have nothing to establish it's there. Right? I have nothing. So if you were to give me, if I said it was there, I would, if I insist it's there, there's something I need to say about it, right? Like, if something is there, it has a characteristic. It has some characteristic. It performs a function.
There's one thing you can say about it, that it doesn't start and doesn't end.
I can say the same about a non-existent thing. A flying cow. It doesn't start and doesn't end. It doesn't make a flying cow existent, right? Is BB on my table right now? BB? BB?
No.
No. BB is non-existent on my table. So that's a non-existent. So it exists because it doesn't start and it doesn't end. Right? You can say that about something that's not there. Right? BB's never been on that table. Will, I don't think, ever sit on that table. So it doesn't start and doesn't end. I can say things about BB. It doesn't make him existent. So just because I can say things cannot be perceived. Just because I say cannot be perceived doesn't make it existent. Shapeless doesn't make it existent. So the things that the characteristics that you describe it is no proof for its existence. So if you say it is there, then say something about it that is other than existence of BB on this table. Yes?
Maybe all it says is just our limits of comprehending, or like you talked about measurement. Before we could measure light, we didn't know there was an infrared light. Right? Okay. But it was there, we just didn't know.
Great. Okay, so now you're saying, yeah, but maybe it's there, we just don't perceive it, okay? But how do you know it's there?
I'm saying maybe.
Maybe.
I
Okay.
can't negate that.
Maybe,
Just because
okay.
I can perceive that.
Yes. All right. Maybe it's good, but the problem is we are so sure it's there. Our whole life is governed by there, right? So at least maybe would already make a huge difference to our life. Maybe, right? We're so sure it's there. We have a whole story around it. We go to therapy. We spend a lot of money for it. Black Friday is a big deal to satisfy the eye, right? So maybe, it's only maybe. That's already life-changing. Okay? But actually, since it's such a big part of our life, we should be able to find it because it's very much part of us. It's not like maybe a different dimension has got nothing to do with me. Well, then I don't care. But the issue is that it's governing our life. It's the center of our life. It's the one thing. It's the center of our universe. Maybe it's not enough, is it? Right? And it appears so solidly. So maybe there's a maybe of something which I have no idea of, but it appears so solidly. We're just looking at the one that's appearing to our mind, and there's no maybe there. Solidly appearing. And the way it appears, does it really exist that way? Okay? Because there's a conventional eye. Anyway, there's a conventional eye, and we don't have a problem with that. But the conventional eye, the perception of a mere eye, which means a non-existent eye, a merely labeled eye, cannot give rise to attachment and anger, etc. So those disruptive emotions, which are really the things that harm us. Those are the symptoms of our misapprehension. Okay? And without the root cause of this misperception, we couldn't have the symptoms: anger, resentment, hatred, jealousy, etc. Okay? So anyway, the point is, if the self exists as separate, we should be able to find it, something of it, right? Something at least. We don't find anything. We can only say things about it like it's shapeless. Yes, yeah, but Bibi on the table is shapeless. So that doesn't prove in any way it's there. Okay. All right. So we have no proof for its existence. We cannot find it, in other words. We cannot find it. Then, if it existed, so what does it say? Either has to be one with the body, and mind, or separate. The oneness is already pretty absurd. So some people say it's the collection of mind and body. Have you heard that word, collection? And then there's, the Buddhist argument would be, well, that's like saying a collection of goats are sheep. Because it's all non-I's. So many non-I's, non-selves, become a self. That's like many sheep become goats, or many goats become sheep. How about the body? We can do it with the eye. So all mind and body are the eye, but neither mind nor body, nor any mind, nor any body part is an eye. How can many non-eyes become an eye? And if we look at the body, there seems to also be like a solid body, like something solid that holds together the body parts. Again, none of the parts, that seem to be held together by this entity are that entity. And still we say the collection is the entity. That also wouldn't make sense, right? How a car, what is a car? What makes a car a car? Same with the eye, right? Except you don't have mind as a part of it, but they're physical parts. So what is the car within the car? If it's the collection of the parts, then every time a tire breaks down, right? And I say the car is broken down, the whole collection would have to break down. If I say I'm sick because I have a headache, then everything about me, every part would have to be sick. And you could no longer see me. Because you don't see the collection. You don't see everything. Collection is everything. That's not okay. And when I'm walking, I can no longer say I'm walking. Because not everything is walking. I can no longer say I'm moving, because if I've been moving, everything would have to be moving. Right? Because the collection is the eye. So that doesn't sit right. So when I look for this eye, and this is the analysis we do, why do we say that? It's kind of like, unless you had a suggestion, another way to look for it, but this is said to be, as long as there's a sense of an eye, as long as the mind perceives it, it will not be convinced that this is impossible. So it's like, let's say you believe your pen, you lost your phone in this room, okay? And you truly believe it. You were so convinced. There's nothing that, the only way I can convince you is say, look for it. It's the only way. I can only suggest, well, I'll leave you alone, knock yourself out, search for it. And when you look around, and in every corner, you've looked everywhere, it's not there. Then you come out and you say, no, it's not there. Would you agree? That's the only way in which you can come to understand that in this room, your phone is not in this room. If I tell you it's not in there, that's not enough. You need to experience it yourself. Okay? So to really know firsthand, you need to experience it yourself. So with regard to the self, we're doing a meditation where you look around this room, you look around your mind and body, and look for the self. Okay? So those are the methods described. Either it's one with mind and body, if it is there, the strong, solid eye that appears to us, either it's one with mind and body, or separate from mind and body. And you really search for it. Then the idea would be, is it? So there's this quote, I haven't forgotten, you've raised your hand, but I just want to finish that part. So there's this quote from a text from Nagarjuna. It's called, the text is called The Fundamental Wisdom. And in the 27th chapter, there's a verse that is applied to the Buddha, saying also the Buddha doesn't exist as a separate being, like the way, the Buddha doesn't exist in the same way as I don't exist. The same sense of like a separate Buddha, a separate I, it's not there. So here you can replace he, or the Tathagata, the Buddha, with the I. You could say, I am not mind and body. I'm not different from mind and body. My mind and body are not in me, nor am I in mind and body. I do not possess mind and body. What is the I? So you're checking. When we say, I'm not mind and body, I'm saying I'm not one with mind and body. I'm not the collection. I'm not all of mind and body. Because otherwise, for you to touch me, you actually have to touch my mind as well. And to touch me, it's not enough to touch this part. You have to touch every part. Because I'm everything. Or I could be different from mind and body. So, can I be different from mind and body? Well, I should be able to remove mind and body and still have the I. And the mind and body are not in me. Like if something is in something else, like apples are in a bowl, right? Apples are in a bowl. So if mind and body were in me, it would be like I'm like the bowl and mind and body are within me. That's bizarre. Like I'm a swimming pool and mind and body are swimming inside me. And then I'm also not in mind and body. Like mind and body is like a forest and I'm running through the forest as like a separate entity. So this is forest, that's mind and body, and I'm inside it. Or a worm in an apple. The I is the worm and mind and body is an apple and I'm kind of moving around them. That's also not there, right? That's a separate entity. And then I possess my mind and body. Where is that possessor? Like I possess a dog. There's the dog, there's the mind, there's like me as just a person, like, okay, none of those can really be found. So you look at it in different possibilities as in like, how is it part of that? Okay. Now this analysis, we are philosophically in Buddhism, you're more used to this one or different, right? You're really, really used to that, and then it's very simple to analyze in that way. And at some point you're like, it's not there, right? My iPhone is not in the room. So the way that I appears to me cannot be there. That's the non-findability. That's the analysis we do. So just first looking for it. Yes?
So we're always talking about the self, about finding the self.
Yeah.
But if the mind is the basic of it all,
Yes.
so what about meditating the mind, reflecting the mind in order to find or to see the nature of the self?
Yes. Very good point. Very good point.
And in the meditation, you meditate the mind.
Yes. So she's saying, well, but we've heard so much that actually the self is a creation of the mind. That's true philosophically, but that's not how it feels in everyday life, right? So therefore, even if you do that, once you leave the room and someone calls you Freya or whatever, right? It's still not, oh, they accused my mind. It's not like, oh, my mind has been insulted. No, it feels like the I has been insulted. Or when everyone is looking at you, right? It feels like they're looking at me. Well, they're not looking at your mind, obviously. So why do you feel embarrassed? Why feeling this very strong sense of like, oh, they're looking at me, when they can't be looking at your mind? You see, you're right. What you're saying is right. However, it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel that way. So we're only dealing with the appearance of the I as it appears to us when we're angry, when we're resentful, when we're fearful, etc. That exaggerated. I'm not saying fear cannot be helpful in all that. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying certain emotions, because we exaggerate the I, can even be beneficial. But it's almost like playing with poison. Sooner or later, it can actually harm you greatly. So this exaggerated sense, it can lead to incredible hatred. It can make you kill people and do the most horrible things. So because it can be so harmful for yourself, we need to really look at that self. Okay? And then, when we no longer believe in that self, then we can look elsewhere. But it's to deal with, yeah, exactly that. There was another, yes, you raised your hand, did you? Yes, please.
And how does the mind stream? Like the thing the three incarnates.
Mm-hmm.
Like
The
how is
mind
it
stream.
in relation to the self or the perception of the self?
Well, I say my mind, right? When I say, for instance, they insulted me, and I ask you, okay, so they insulted you, how is that an insult? Well, they hurt my feeling. They hurt my feeling, right? So, but there's a sense they hurt me because they hurt my feeling. if you are your mind, there are many different minds, right? So sense consciousness